Hey everybody, it's your buddy Beard Grizzly, and my goodness, we actually did it. We got some lore guys together and we sat down and we were able to actually chat with each other. Because, you know, all of our schedules being conflicting and going all over the place and everything, we had to do something. And this is actually what led to Mynameisbyf, Myelin Games, Darkside Royalty Lore's Joker, and myself able to sit down in one room and finally get to chat, especially right before Warmind. Right, you guys are seeing this with Warmind like right on the cusp of coming out, or I guess really you might actually be watching it even when Warmind is out. We wanted to try to get this out quicker, but unfortunately time just wasn't on our side. So that being said, you guys actually get a chance to hear what we were hoping for before Warmind happened. And because of that, I think it still kind of is a nice, quaint piece of actual lore and ideas that we are kind of thinking about. It's just to kind of see who got what right and who was actually on the right lines. And I guess, I don't know. Honestly, to me, it was just four friends sitting down and having a chat. And that was the most fun about it all. That being said, I'm going to have every single channel link down in the description below, so if you're interested in hearing from one of the other creators at all, and you're not familiar with them at all yet, you can go down there and check them out as well. I know I'm definitely the smallest when it comes down to channels represented on the little podcast that we had here, but I know that YouTube's algorithm isn't exactly the best thing. I'm still finding channels that have like 150,000, and I'm like, who is that? I've never seen them in my life. And I feel bad because I don't get to connect with those people. Anyway, I'm going to shut up and you guys can go ahead and listen here. Definitely don't need to sit and watch, though Joker did a very good job in editing this video. That being said, thank you, Joker, again, for allowing me to kind of rest and get together some of my thoughts before Warmind was otherwise done and feel a little bit more accomplished besides. But I'll catch you guys at the end of the video. Again, I hope you enjoy this little podcast of ours.
Greetings Guardians, Mynameisbyf here, and this is a little bit of a different video from usual. I am joined by the fellow lore masters of the Destiny community. Introducing them one by one, we have Myelin Games, or Melon Games, or whatever you want to call him. He is Australia's local lore master. How are you doing, Myelin?
Good, thank you. Yeah, I get lots of different versions of Myelin Games, Melon, Myelin. But thank you for having me. Yeah, appreciate it.
Indeed, it's good to have you here, my dude. Next up, we've got, is it a beard? Is it a grizzly beard? Is it a grizzly bear with a beard? I don't know, but its name is Beard Grizzly. How you doing, my dude?
I am doing absolutely fantastic, and it's great to actually be here with the three of you otherwise. I gotta say that right now, because I did not expect that we were going to be able to get this together, but holy cow.
Just in the nick of time, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Alright, and last but not least, he needs no introduction. He is the Joker to Batman's everywhere, I suppose. He is the anti-hero of the Destiny community. I'm kidding, dude. It's Joker.
I'm the Dredgeon of
sorry,
the Destiny community.
Deadpool? I'm sorry.
Oh my god. Maybe he is the Deadpool of the Destiny community. Either way, Joker, it's great to have you on here as well, my dude.
Dude, it is great to be on.
Uh-oh.
That's all I gotta say to that. I was just like, great to be on. Like,
Yeah.
oh, this is awesome.
No, sorry, you, yeah, no. We're recording this currently over Discord as well, and your audio cut out just a wee bit, so we only heard on, and I was like, oh no, oh god, I've insulted him too much, this is awful. Not good.
That's it! It's done! It's over with! I demand trial by combat!
We tried building bridges, oh god.
Classic Joker.
Cool. But guys, thank you so much for everyone who came along here, everyone who's tuning in. This is going to be our kind of preliminary thoughts of Warmind, Destiny's lore as it is at current, and the DLC that we are all looking forward to playing and looking forward to critiquing, and are hoping is going to be good. So we're going to run through several topics in this video, and we're going to be discussing them one by one. In particular, we're going to start with the thoughts we have on the story we've seen thus far, and I'm actually going to go ahead and throw this to Joker to start. What are your thoughts on all the new stuff that's come out? We've had the narrative preview, we've had the new Warmind comic, we've had some hints in-game thus far as to what's going on with Warmind, and of course we've had all of the big trailers that they've dropped. What's your gut reaction? What are your thoughts?
So, Warmind is a bit of a mixed bag right now, right? I see some things and I'm like, oh yeah, that's cool. And then I see other things and I'm like, oh no, they're retconning again, aren't they? And so like the cool things is like the little animalistic part of me goes, I see Zool, and I'm like, I want to kill it.
Kill it with fire.
I really, really want to kill it, and I want to wear it as a hat.
Right.
But then I'm like, then I see stuff like Anna Bray, and I'm like, did they need to bring that character back? It was pretty conclusive. Well, I guess somewhat conclusive in the No Time to Explain quest that she was dead. Okay, well, couldn't they have done a really cool "Hey, got you" where it's like, yeah, it says Anna Bray on the name tag, but really it's Elsie Bray or something like that. I think it just adds a level of complexity, not complexity, that's not a word. A level of complexity to the story that they're trying to tell that just doesn't need to be there, because now they need to explain why Anna's still alive instead of just going on with the story. So now we're... go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's sort of one of the things that I'm highly anticipated, mostly so I don't have to pay Byf my bet for, because we bet money, because I was like, Byf, it is not going to be Anna Bray. She dead, and obviously it's Anna Bray, so I hope the best outcome is that maybe it is Elsie Bray and she's got the wrong name tag on.
I'm gonna go ahead and just say this right here and now. There was a point at which I was like, gotcha! And then I realized how much of this was actually them trying to fiddle around with the lore to make this work, and I was like, maybe not. In all fairness, like, it's one of those really weird in-between points where it was very much assumed she was dead, and the card literally says Anna Bray who is lost to us, and I don't want to go ahead and assume, but even though it doesn't say definitively she's dead, like, when you say someone is lost to you, in the same way you say Pradith was lost to us, it's, right?
I mean, especially after you say, hey, Punjari has died, and Anna Bray is also lost to us.
I'm going to say, you get the sigil rings between the two of with Pajari and both Anna, and within the No Time to Explain quest, it's just like, both of them lost to us, both to the second death. And it's like, that sounds pretty definitive. Yeah. So to me, that sounds recovered body. That sounds like recovered something else, especially in that instance, but who knows on records for sure, as we're also finding out with some of this stuff, right?
Indeed, right.
I mean, that's probably for me the major thing. And I think the way the lore is looking so far, they have given like a lot of reasoning and thought and explained other elements. So I'm sort of do have a bit of hope that they will explain the No Time to Explain quest line, which would be the ultimate irony.
Don't have time to explain it.
Oh boy,
wouldn't that be ironic? Oh my god. Okay, cool. Sorry, I cut you off, Joker. You were finishing off some of your your thoughts on the lore so far. So you spoke a bit about retcon, and then any other things
well, like where I was going with it is like if it was like say Elsie, right? That's just a character you get in, you're good. If it's Anna, well then you have to explain that retcon or the retcon or why she faked her death or anything like that. And I guarantee you the answer will not be satisfactory. Especially if it's something like Guardians aren't supposed to.
I'm not making any more. I'm not making any more bets because I've already lost enough bets.
I was gonna say,
oh my gosh.
Especially if it's like,
go for it, Joker.
no,
go
dude,
for it. My apologies.
I was gonna say, especially if it's something like Guardians aren't supposed to look into their past, like it said at the beginning of the video or the trailer. And I just face palmed when I heard that because I'm like, we have Cade, we have like, Shinobu, we have like half a dozen other Guardians who've done this. And then, like, you have to imagine Thanatonauts have done it.
And, it
so
seems
like,
impractical as a rule, right?
Really?
Like, do not look into your past, except for when your past happens to be lying by you when you are resurrected for the first time, then you're good. But, okay, sure, Silly.
So, I mean, I probably would have had the same opinion, Joker, before we had some of the Weblaw released, and from what I saw at the summit, like I would probably be preparing for disappointment in regards to the explanation around Anna Bray. The one thing that sort of has changed my mind a little bit is how well integrated the Weblaw seems to be at this stage. So, in Tara Khan's Weblaw, she talks about, AI tours and how the Clover Spray facilities pretty much making warm weather gear, which seems to be like a front for whatever they're actually doing at Clover Spray. And then you go read the lore tabs, and they're like all about warm weather gear. And so like when I read the lore tabs at the summit, I was like, this is so dull. Like, why is it like all of them are like, oh, we worked out how to heat your head with the helmet, but like it's nice to see that, oh, this forms a picture of like this is the Clover Spray front, and there's sort of been a couple examples of that being really well integrated. So I think that's the thing that I'm sort of thinking that there could be a bit of hope for that really that explanation about Ana Bray, because we are seeing, I think, the puzzle pieces working together a lot better than we saw in the beginning of D2.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, not to interrupt your train of thought there, but were they all as punchy as "Give us your children"?
That's a good question.
Wait, what?
The original Clover Spray Grimoire card, right? Or not? Is it Clover Spray or is it? Yeah.
Yeah, the Clover Spray Grimoire card is like, "Give us your children." Oh, we don't mean your real children. We mean your ideas.
Okay. They're pretty close to being a little bit cheesy like that. Yeah, some of them are like that. They're making warm weather gear.
Mm-hmm. I want to throw this to Beard next. So what are your thoughts on everything we've seen thus far? Because again, like, even in one of the videos in the vidocs, we actually got from the developers a little bit of stuff saying like, hey, we're going to bring back scannables, which were absent in Curse of Osiris, and we're going to go ahead and make sure that all of the Seraph weapons have lore tabs and whatnot. You know, generally speaking, what are your feelings? What do you think of everything?
Well, we also don't necessarily know what those collectibles are going to be like as well, or the things that we shoot to apparently collect. And I'm still kind of up in the air on how that's going to go. I have this really bad feeling that it's going to be like Assassin's Creed 2, where you go to collect the feathers, and then after like every 50, you end up getting a story part or something. I hope it doesn't work out to be quite that much, but you get my feelings on that one, I think, to a point or a degree. Now, I'm probably going to be hated by the other three of you here, because I think that they've done a really good job with kind of showcasing some of the ways that they want to go with the story, where we didn't have some puzzle pieces that were, being able to be filled in. We haven't seen things that were fully explained, which I know we'll get to one very big one in particular, which is like Charlemagne. To me, I think that if they didn't have this planned to begin with, I'm taking it from the perspective that this is at least a fairly good way to write around it. I'm not saying it's perfect, and I don't think that any of our headcanons are going to be in any way satisfied unless they are satisfied in the way we want them to be. But for anything that I'm kind of reading from especially the web lore to some of the tabs that you had actually brought back with you, Myelin, those things are, to me, very good tie-ins and back to what we're kind of starting to see from Bungie a little bit more. I think the comic is kind of show of that. I think the web lore is very good show of that. And the general overall tone and feel with what we saw from Twitter for Chris Barrett over the last week as well, just trying to include the community back in, that revived subreddits. I don't know how I need to respond to anything else like that.
Oh my god. It was so wonderful, and I'm so glad he eventually clarified that yes, this wasn't a real thing, but man, that was skilled.
That was good. That was
well, and then we find out later that like the first half of all of that was actually the real Rasputin entry, which was amazing. And then the everything after the end transmission, he's like, "Oh, I was just kidding," or am I?
Yes.
Yeah, really.
So I gotta say this too, just generally talking about the impressions of the story, I am in this place where I sit here and disappointingly to many people, I have to wait and see what it's like and judge it when it's in my hands. But the reason for that is because I sit on both sides of the fence. I've seen the potential for it to be disastrous, but also the potential for it to be incredible. Like, whenever we talk about how are they gonna rectify this weird notion that Ana Bray was dead and now she's alive again, And, you know, not dead as in, oh, Guardian down, dead as in, oh my god, Guardian really down, dead.
Is
right?
that what happens
then on
when
the
a
other side-
Sunsinger goes down and does not have
Right.
self-revive?
Precisely, right? And
Do we just call that a Jaren Ward?
his light is gone. But no, the, yeah, and then on the flip side of things, I see what you're talking about with the Collectibles, Beard. And I sit here and, yet again, I think to myself, okay, they could fill in some really cool stuff here for us to do, and at its best, this could be like a new Outbreak Prime or a new Touch of Malice, but it probably won't be. At its worst, it could be exactly as you say, where it's just feathers. And I really hope it isn't just damn feathers, because, you know, we've been going around far too long waiting for something incredible to happen. So, yeah, I mean, I'm totally with you guys on that front, on both potential for this to be fantastic and also potential for it to be a little bit downhill. But I think, above all, I want to go ahead and just emphasize, I don't know anything of this, right? Like, I haven't played the expansion, I didn't go to the summit, good Matt has knowledge, I do not. Thank you for bringing the lore tabs home, by the way. That was very generous of you. And yeah, there's just a lot of stuff that we still haven't really touched on yet. So,
I mean,
yeah,
to clarify, like, even at the summit, we didn't talk about plot lines or future stuff, and even the Weblaw, they didn't actually reveal that either. So the Weblaw was a big surprise for me too. Actually, I would have thought that would have been mentioned for their plans for the lore, and that wasn't either. But I guess my general impression, and I haven't really publicly spoke about this, but when I met with Chris Barrett, one of the narrative leads, I got the general impression they're like, yep, we agree with everything you're saying and we're onto it. That's a general feeling I got from it. And I think with what we're seeing so far, I think that sort of confirms that feeling. Because, they were making a lot of notes, they were asking a lot of questions, and I went into all the topics that we spoke about. But I got the general impression that, like, there was this quiet confidence from Mr. Barrett. They're like, yep, we agree with that and we're onto it. And that's sort of my general impression so far from what we've seen. I think there's better integration of the lore and the puzzle pieces working together. I think they've expanded the depth already. We've seen like 2 new cryptarchs. We've seen 2 new other characters, one in a support role to Anna Bray being Cameron, and another one called Kieran being a support role to Tara Khan. The mystery seems to be a bit back. There's been heated debates already in the lore, in our lore Twitter group about what X means and what that does. And I do think they, there's obviously room for criticism. There's definitely things they could have done better. Well, at this point, there seems like there could have been things that have done better, like, talking about Anna Bray, and we don't maybe get an explanation for that, or talking about Charlemagne. But I think that in general, they've gone towards respecting the lore better from Destiny 1, and then sort of acknowledging that these things did actually happen, and we want to make sure we do justice to that. And the tone I think is so much better than what it was in Curse of Osiris in regards to
so much better.
Yeah. And I will say, just where my point of view is coming from is, like, I see like questions and I'm like, I hope they answer that, or I hope they answer that, or I hope that they answer that. And if my only real questions are like, hey, what's going on with Charlemagne, or hey, what's going on with Anna, and I don't really have a lot to say about the other things, negatively at least, and they've put out a ton of stuff, well, I guess that is them going in the right direction. And I should probably clarify that.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think it's everyone's, all your concerns are very, like, legitimate. And I think we're probably in a stage where it's wait and see, really, to see, like, it's either sink or swim.
Yeah, really.
The foundation's there, and now it's like, let's see what's delivered, because I think that will be, that could potentially be a nail in the coffin, or it could be, hey, we are still going in the right direction.
Right? Like, I think the rest of the community is sitting back being like, man, September is going to be when it's all good, September's the time to wait for, etc., etc. And in the lore community, we're sitting here being like, that's great for you guys, but we kind of need proof that you understand what we were talking about right now at Warmind.
Yeah, we want a halfway point between where Curse of Osiris was and where you're going in September.
Yes,
and I think this is looking like it. They're making an effort, is what I would say. They didn't need to do the Weblaw, and they didn't need to do another comic, especially after how poor the other comic was received.
The other comic we do not speak of.
Erase that
Hey,
one.
the
on
art was
world's
good.
grave.
I
Let
love
me
the
tell
art in
ya.
that comic.
Oh my goodness.
I love the art in that comic. Even though Osiris has apparently been wearing the same thing since before Twilight Gap.
He's stanky.
Hey, so do you guys think we're going to keep getting Weblaw, or do you think this was just an introduction to the Warmind DLC? Do you think this will be like an ongoing thing until September, or is this just a sneak peek?
I could hopefully see that they could do this like once a month. That would be my hope. Maybe if they could do like, and maybe not even 5, like drop 1 or 2, maybe 3 at the most, something to that nature, just to kind of unravel those questions that they might leave for us, even through lore tabs or throughout the campaign of the story. I think that would be a great way to still introduce it, but they still have to figure a way to then, I guess, motivate it back into the game as well. I think that's the other big question right now, because of course not everybody goes back to the website to even read the TWAB or anything like that. Yes, I say TWAB, deal with it. But that being said, I would hope that they continue with it. I think that the outcry from what we have seen within this community as a whole has been overwhelmingly positive for it. And has been sparking a bunch of different questions and conversations that has been, I would say, grossly needed, especially just to kind of get people interested again or get them thinking again. The thing that I try to do in like every single video that I produce is just the idea of how can I make people think? And this Weblaw stuff, I think, has absolutely successfully done that.
I think one of the only criticisms I have of the Weblaw, look at me, always having a criticism. No, I think they need to.
Sorry.
I think they need to aggregate it better though, because just putting it as a an update, it's going to get buried in a week or 2.
Yeah, I completely agree. It is already buried.
Yeah.
I have to keep. I struggle every time I want to go back and look at it. It's only 2 posts back or something. I'm like, which one do I click on again to find it?
I'm glad that I put it as a link in a video, otherwise I wouldn't have a way to get back to it, you know? It's just like, God.
Darn it, Baxter, come on, get on that.
Yeah, wait, no, I think he's done it, actually, if you check the records
I think he's done it, I didn't look.
Yeah, but it's not...
Dude. Praise Ishtar.
Like, I love that Ishtar does all that stuff, but it's, I mean, it's their job, but it's not their job, if that makes sense.
Right.
For sure.
Bungie should have it aggregated better. It is part of their site.
Yeah, I think so.
Now, hopefully, we'll just see a new website come out eventually, where it's like, you have like all your top options, and it's like, especially if they keep doing this, right? And then it's like, you know, Weblaw, and it's just all the Weblaw entries, and you just click on it, and it's just like there. But like with it being as part of an update, it gets buried under hotfixes, it gets buried under TWABs, it gets buried under, hey, look at this cool thing we have.
Developer updates or whatever, roadmap updates.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. If I might,
well, even just hotfixes too. Like, woof.
Yeah. If I might say very briefly, I think that whilst them putting Weblaw out is a really cool idea and pushing it, I think that previously we touched on the idea of them needing to integrate it with the game more, and I think it goes back to us being a little bit starved in comparison to what we got with D1 with the entirety of the Grimoire, and us forgetting that wonderful as the Grimoire was, the problem was that it wasn't in-game. And this is not me touting a thing of remove the Grimoire, but like, I think if they're going to do this, link it back to the game somehow. Drop an update, add like 2 or 3 little beacons on the map or whatever. You go there, you collect a thing, and then after all is said and done, it appears in your inventory. And sure, maybe you have it also available online if you're so inclined. But
even just a stupid simple fix. You've been playing Warframe, right? Have you been playing? I don't know how it works on PC, but have you been playing Warframe on console?
I've been playing on PC, but I think, are you talking about the Cephalon fragments?
No, not even that. I'm talking like you load up the game and there's like 5 different menus on the load up screen of news, different events going on, yada, yada, yada. If they want to do like a monthly lore tab in like because they already have a way to inject updates and new news into the game through the title screen I mean, they do it all the time with Iron Banner, faction rallies, whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
I think they need to do more with that system and do something like what Warframe does. So you have the news, you have the hot fixes, but then you tab over and it's like, oh, hey, here's the web lore. Oh, here's this. Here's that.
Yeah.
Here's these updates. Now I know what's been patched. Now I know what's been fixed. And I don't have to go to Bungie.net and it's all in the game.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one.
Or you can just hit X and get past it.
Firstly, I think collectibles. I think one of the things about Grimoire cards that involved everyone is even if they don't like the lore, like the collecting side of it appealed to a lot of Destiny players. Like, I want to get max score, and having collectibles in environments does a very specific thing for Destiny, because a lot of Destiny players, including me, you just bolt from A to B, whether it's a strike or whether you're in a public event. It is just beeline to the next loot, and collectibles make you stop. They make you look at things that you might have not seen in the environment, and then hopefully unlocking them reveals some lore that, you know, when you're in that collecting space, you're actually more inclined to read something. Whereas when you're running A to B and you just get X loot, like, you're not really in the mindset of like stopping and trying to understand what's happening. So I think, you know, I'm hoping with scannables there's a system to track which ones you've got, and there's a collecting aspect of it, and there's lots of things that were wrong with scannables that sort of stopped that collecting aspect. So I don't think I'm not hopeful we'll actually see that in Warmind, but I would love to be
maybe
surprised.
In September.
Yeah.
September would be nice.
Yeah.
September.
Yeah.
Well, have any of you guys been playing God of War?
No, and no
Yes.
spoilers. Just saying.
Yes.
Well, I'm not going to spoil anything.
I love
I'm not
the
gonna
fact
spoil
that there's
anything.
great mechanics in there for displaying the lore, I'm sure, but no spoilers. I am trying
Yeah,
to
I'm
keep
not
a lid on
going
that
to
one.
spoil anything, but it has a significantly fleshed out lore, is all I'm going to say, for a hack and slash.
Nice.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
insane.
I'm very glad.
And I don't think it's spoilers. You know, it's what we're talking about. It has a mechanic that intrigues people to want to research more about the lore. And we spoke a lot.
And it's
about
written
this
very
with-
in world too.
in world. I think actually I was talking to Slayeridge about this, and he was saying that the Destiny lore never appealed to him, but he was like a massive like Dark Souls lore like fan, and you know, he was talking about bosses and how these interesting bosses inspires you to want to know more. Like they'll say one line, and like their appearance reflects, you know, their lore, and you're like, oh my god, why did he just say that? What does that mean? And it sort of inspires you to want to find out more about these bosses.
Yeah, we've had just a little bit of that in Destiny, where
Right.
like the emissary is like, my brother, he's distant. And I'm like, well, you kind of look like an Awoken. Wait a minute. You know, are you the queen? What?
So I mean, I think that those kind of subtle hints with like environmental clues, boss clues would be, you know, very welcome in Destiny to sort of appeal to the greater audience with like, hey, I'm actually interested in finding out more about this boss, this character, rather than him being let's defeat him as quick as possible so I can get my loot.
Yeah. I mean, it boils down to more of a mechanics issue than anything else, really, because what it always ends up being is that the boss is just a really big Hydra, or a really big Hobgoblin, or a really big Centurion, or a really big Vandal. You know, it's like, hey, which enemy type we going to blow up in size this time? Scion? Cool, that's a strike in Warmind, by the way. So, yeah, on PlayStation,
PlayStation only,
Xbox,
yeah.
and PC.
Yeah.
But yeah, you run into that huge problem of Destiny has an enormous issue with its bosses where only the raid ones feel special, and the raid ones are cool. Some of them could be more inspired, I'll grant. Like, even though it's one of my favorite fights in Destiny 2, I still think Argos is a little bit lazy, because they could have just designed something which was more than kind of like a Hydra that flips its head around a little bit and does some owl action. I don't know. Like,
I mean, if you think to
it could be much better.
Kingsfall, like Kingsfall, every lieutenant of Oryx had an environment that was like, whoa, this is something that I want to like look into. You know, like Golgoroth is a really good example of that. That, you know, I feel is much closer to that Dark Souls boss. Where you're like, oh, this guy's uber creepy, and I sort of want to find out a little bit more. Like, why does he have the Tablet of Ruin like in his cave?
Yeah.
Why does he have pools of light hanging from the ceiling like a spider? So, I mean,
Well, I always go back to the book that came with the collector's edition, where it's got all of these like people that Callus wants you to go kill, like it's a hit list.
Oh my gosh.
And then Callus is like, "Yeah, you go kill all these people, then you can come to my pleasure palace."
Where are
And then like none of that's in the game, and you're like, "Oh,
Yeah.
well, okay,
Yeah.
that would have been cool."
Like, imagine if you had a separate series of quests where it's just like, hey, mysterious message coming in, and then all of a sudden it's actually Callus on the other end, but he's telling you to go after each of these people, you know?
And you
It's
got
like,
some interesting mechanics that could be in here. Like his daughter was a pilot, dude. Now think about like you having to like kill something in the air. I mean, we kind of do that already, but like as a boss.
I've never
So, you
thought
know.
about that. That would be
Or-
so cool to like. I always tell people about my dream with Ahamkara and facing dragons and like shooting, tracking homing missiles at you know,
Yes.
like having 6 guardians line up
The dragon raid. The dragon raid.
and do a volley, a volley of missiles that takes down the dragon before you do DPS round. But you know, that would work with a ship too. That would be really cool, like locking onto a to a ship.
Or you
in
have
there.
the freeborn Ozat, whatever,
Ozat,
the Scion, who use the OXA machine, so she has like these like she can see in the future, you know, or at least when she did that. And I could imagine them making that a mechanic, or I mean, like, and these are kind of like raid level mechanics, but they could put them in strikes, you know, just make them intuitive.
Like, when you do the PlayStation 1, for example, the Lake of Shadows has a mechanic by which you get tethered, basically, and the floor starts to disappear over time. And the two of those combined, they're not manageable because you will just sit in the floor and you will die. One at a time is somewhat manageable because you can either move or you just shoot the tether. But, you know, they're starting to play around with raid-like mechanics in strikes, and that's fine as long as you introduce a limited number of them so players don't get overwhelmed. Because that's kind of what strikes are supposed to be.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Right. And I think the strikes, and maybe this is just me, but like imagine if we had like the one where it was the Scion that I was just talking about. And imagine she pulls you into kind of the equivalent of the Callus room when you're fighting Callus and you go to the Void.
Nightmare Realm? Yeah.
And then the Nether Realm. And then you get trained in that strike in a low pressure, kind of easy to do it, the raid mechanic.
So projections, basically.
And then when you, and so you're dealing with the projections, you're dealing with all this other stuff. But then when you're in the raid, you're like, you at least have an idea of what's supposed to be kind of going on. Because you've done the strikes and the game has taught you how to do the hard activity.
Absolutely.
Well, I guess all the things we're speaking about now is, you know, in the developer insight videos, you know, they, I guess, sort of agree because the Vicarious Visions wanted a boss fight. You know, they wanted, you know, all this environmental storytelling that we're speaking about. You know, it seems like, or that what they've been saying is that it's going to be in the Warmind. There's going to be this build up to the boss, which they're making it seem like the boss will be Zol, but I think we'll have to, I don't know if that's tricky editing or not. We'll have to wait and see.
Right. If I
It's
if I
Zol,
might-
but then you get onto the Leviathan, it's Yul.
oh boy, I'm not even ready to contemplate what we're fighting in Spire of Stars yet. Holy Lord. Oh god.
No thanks.
If I may say though, we got slightly off track just a wee bit. I'm conscious of time. Like, it's great that we are getting this in though, because I think this is some good stuff for just people to hear, and for if Bungie does deign to listen to this on one of our 4 channels, good to hear. But let's keep this rolling just a wee bit.
Let's get back on
I'm going to go
track,
ahead and throw it back to you in a second, Beard. I want to get just predictions and expectations on the story, because this is something that you touched on earlier as well, Joker, is the fact that we have a lot of moving pieces to this. We've got Rasputin, we've got What Remains of Clovis Spray, we've got Nokris and Zol, we have Anna Bray. There's a lot of stuff to juggle here. So, I mean, I'm going to throw this to you first, Beard. what are your predictions for what's actually going to happen? What's the main thread of everything that's going to pull it together? What's the plot point we're going to be chasing? Or do you reckon it's going to be kind of like Rise of Iron, where it's a bit of a more jumbled kind of mess? I don't know. What are your expectations? What are your predictions?
What I'm personally kind of hoping to see, which I guess should be more the thing that I separate from all of what I think is going to actually happen. What I'm hoping to see is that we will end up having a main storyline that at least introduces and covers most of what we want to hear about all these different tie-ins. So we need to figure out stuff about Rasputin and why it is that he is on Mars, right?
Mm-hmm.
We need to hear some stuff about that. We need to hear more about Clovis Bray and how actually Weyland-Yutani these guys actually are, because they've given hints and little slip-ups here and again throughout lore and otherwise, but like right now, when you start to actually come out and say, oh no, these guys are totally like the Tyrell Corporation and Weyland-Yutani, I'm probably going to be looking at these guys even more skeptical than I had before. And again, about the Anna Bray dead summary, we already kind of covered that topic. I think that would be something that could be covered in even a few sentences, but I know that's me, and I know I'm a little easier to please. But the biggest one I think is going to be that kind of just throws everything out of the loop in a way is the Nokris and Wormgod summary, like in a high fashion, because all of a sudden it's like Nokris and Rasputin, or not Nokris, but the Hive and Rasputin have, of course, been a key player throughout like the Dark Below and especially other stuff with the Hive with the Taken. So it's not like this is a new story to kind of introduce in that realm, but it is one that, especially if Nokris is somebody that is separate piece or another piece that is totally other workings of the Hive and away from Oryx, needs a lot more explaining. That's my worry right now, which I know I'm kind of mirroring from what you were mentioning, Byf, but it's just to kind of go along the idea that there is a lot to cover here. And what I would hope for is that we would get something that would introduce all these layers, but then we would have like Rise of Iron and Taken King, I think, did quests very well. And it would build off of that story a little bit further. So we have things that would deal with... perfect time to introduce Eris for this, though, right? Because at that point, you could go ahead and be like, hey, Eris is going to be our liaison to like figuring out more about the Hive again. And we know that she's been looking for Nokris, so this is a perfect time to actually have her build off of those quest elements. And then we could do the same thing with Anna and Clovis, and then with Rasputin, well, that's always been a pretty heavy Vanguard issue, and for what we know from Saladin, he knows a lot more than he's been letting on. So these are the little bits that I think they could actually utilize those side quests and side missions a little bit more to allow for a bit more of a story and to also give us a little bit more to do. Like have it be, sure, like 9 missions or whatever it is for the main campaigns at this point, like we're used to seeing, and just have that be the cohesive bit that you want to tell. But that needs to still tie in with the quests and kind of make it more as like a keep going. One of my biggest complaints with Destiny 2 right now that I've had from day one has just been that I've felt like there isn't a desperate enemy that I have to fight at this point.
Right.
Like we take care of Gaul in Destiny in the vanilla campaign, and then we end up having most of the stuff figured out with Panoptis after all is said and done with Curse of Osiris. So they need to keep these chains going. And I'm hoping that is the case with having like Nokris and Sol, because like we've seen also with Omnigul, Omnigul is still coming back because she's able to go back to her throne realm. So if we don't go into a throne realm, we're not killing Nokris. Right. That would be my biggest thing, which I think would be cool to at least have him as a reoccurring target. Like, and they can reintroduce him at different points and so on. So the possibilities are there for like how they could effectively utilize these characters to keep them going and to have a little bit more of cohesive storytelling, as well as also fundamental things for us to do, which is again the thing that we've all been kind of looking for with the game mechanically, as we were just going over. Plus, of course, having it within the story just to kind of keep up with extra tie-ins and to respect how how we've looked at these Hive, especially, because if we just kill Zol and Nokris out of the one strikes,
I hope not.
That's gonna be a lore nightmare to talk about. Yeah,
I gotta say this too, dude. The minute you mentioned Nokris, my brain was firing like yes, because I think it's fair to say that all of us have been waiting for more clarity on that since we heard the name first in the Taken King expansion. And good lord, now that we're getting them introduced, they have such an open-ended story that there is a lot of potential for Bungie to write something amazing. I say this about Toland, and I think I'm okay to say it about Nokris when I say that both of those characters have the potential to be the Joker of the Destiny universe, not our Joker. But you get what I mean, right? Like, they have this potential build-up of an incredible villain, right? You could sit there and conceivably say, what if Nokris tried to betray Oryx, and that's why he was cast out, and that's why his name was scrubbed from the grave, you know? Maybe it's one of those things where it doesn't make immediate sense, because it's like, well, the Hive try and kill each other all the time, but maybe Nokris was just that good at it, right? You then take that forward and say, well, where could we drop this in sooner? Oh wait, Savathun is going to be a thing at some point. Okay, what if he comes back and is just so good at what he did that he actually steals the crown, you know? Like, this character has so much stuff that could be built into it, and I just really don't want Bungie to miss that opportunity. And
yeah, like he's
especially
the dark
when
horse.
you use a name like Herald, like that could end up meaning quite a few different things. So to leave it as more of an ambiguous name and to just have that title, especially, like, yes, it's Herald of Zol, but for us, we've seen this Herald title utilized in many different functions. Like, we've seen it with Oryx and we've seen it for Savathun already. We also see it with Karaya. So we've got all these different measures that can actually showcase this continued foreshadowing of what might happen either with Savathun or other members of the Hive, at least in particular. I know we get so sidetracked talking about the Hive all the time, and I know there's a ton of people that are so sick and tired of talking about them. But realistically, and I've said it at least publicly too, like, they're the ones that get my brain going, I feel, the most between how it is that they act, because they're a continued mirror for ourselves. So for interest, I think that's why that's there, and why Bungie kind of focuses on them a little bit heavier. Plus their obvious tie-ins, as they've also publicly said, with the darkness and stuff like that.
I also think that the Hive get more attention because their foundation through the Books of Sorrow was so well developed and so well delivered that...
Thank you, Seth Dickinson.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, like,
right?
Bungie has so much to work with the Books of Sorrow, and it was just perfectly set up as something that gave a very satisfying conclusion, but still had a ton of mystery that could be unraveled. And, you know, I think it's weird, this balance between what the community wants to see solved and what we want to remain as a mystery. And like, when we're speaking about Nokris, like, isn't it funny how we're like, please don't conclude Nokris. Like, do not conclude Nokris in this Warmind expansion. We want that to continue. Whereas, like, other plot lines were like, please give us more conclusion. And it's actually this really tough, like, balance between, like, the narrative team trying to predict what the lore community and what people in general, what things do we want to see tied off in a nice bow and feel satisfying, and what things do we want to continue throughout the franchise. And I think that's a really hard thing to understand. And if they miss the mark, everyone's going to be like, why did you conclude Nokris? Why did you let us kill Nokris? Like, we want, you know?
Well, I think...
Go on.
I think there is a fair balance between finishing a storyline as presented within a story, but then also going full Halo 2 ending.
Oh my god.
You know?
Just the notion of that scares me. Holy lord.
Another thing that I would like to never remember, like a certain comic set.
Yep. Both of those things are now banished to the world's grave. Oh wait, from the world's grave, rather.
Yeah,
we've scratched it from the record.
Yeah,
it's official. We had a We literally just had a meeting about this. It's been decided.
But yeah. Joker, where do you reckon the story is going to go? What's if you had to lay out kind of like a plot line of how they're going to unravel this thing? What do you reckon is going to be the main driving force behind it? Do you reckon that it's going to be an Anna Bray centered story, or do you think that it's going to be one that's centered more around a fight between the Warmind and Zol and all of his minions.
I like actually where you went with that question, because there is some very Moby Dick imagery that they've showed off so far. I mean, think about it. You have Rasputin, and he's kind of this crippled Warmind. You know, he definitely doesn't have a tenth of his power that he had in the Golden Age. I'd have to imagine, at least. And yet, Nokris creates this kind of interesting lore hole, where it's like, when did Nokris come to Mars, and when would something have had the power to freeze Nokris if it wasn't Nokris and Zul freezing themselves? And then you have to ask, why would they do that? So you start kind of puzzling out when this could have happened. So I'm like in the camp right now, until proven otherwise, that maybe did Nokris and Zul cause the collapse?
It's so on the whole freezing, like the hive freezing, I actually think that will be explained in the campaign from the lead-in,
right.
from
I think it
the
will too.
Weblaw and from the comic book. They are starting, I think it's Master Reinhardt, throws out a prediction that, hey, it was this massive biological element that happened like pretty much during the collapse, immediately following the collapse, and starts to hint that it's hive related. And then you have Anna Bray's sidekick, who's not a Guardian, Cameron, who's like,
all his conclusions are wrong.
Yeah, critiques Master Reinhardt. It's like, he missed out Rasputin. I think Rasputin's the one that froze the hive, and this was like our first encounter during the collapse. And
it could also be the Traveler, even, if it was pre-collapse. But what I'm saying is, if you have this kind of Leviathan creature, right, and then you have Rasputin, kind of going after it, right? I mean, we even have a spear now, right? How Moby Dick is that?
that's
true. I didn't even think about that.
Nice.
So we're getting a lot of this kind of Moby Dick imagery, and I also think Rasputin will probably evolve as a character, because he's very, at least to me in the comic, at the beginning of the comic, it reminded me kind of like Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, when he's just after he's read Paradise Lost, and he's kind of comparing himself to Lucifer, and you have this character Rasputin. He's like, I'm alone, but he's still, after all the other Warminds, but he still wants to be accepted by his creator. Okay, and Anna Bray, or the Brays, yada yada yada, had a hand in creating the Warminds. So we say he justifies it to himself as a case of, well, no, I only want this because she looks to me, not the light. Really, Rasputin? Is it she looks to you, not the light, or is it because she was your creator?
So much depth.
So I think there's like a human evolution of Rasputin coming along, and I'm really interested to see where that goes. And where I don't think it'll have the same Moby Dick, ending, I do see that the plot line will probably, if I'm right, go along Rasputin's quest for completion or vengeance. I've always believed that Rasputin is kind of the natural evolution of Durandal from Marathon.
Dude,
and
so true.
at the end of Marathon and Marathon Infinity, Durandal realizes that he was wrong. And he, when he's integrated with the other AI, which, what's happening with Rasputin and Charlemagne?
Something. I am not alone.
Something, maybe.
Yeah.
So you have this kind of retelling of the story, and I've always believed Bungie games are pretty cyclical. So I think what we're seeing is Rasputin kind of coming to his redemption arc, but we'll see where they decide to go with it, because the end of Destiny 2 kind of left the world in the same end state as Destiny 1, after 3 years, and the end of Curse of Osiris really didn't do anything to move the needle either. And Rasputin kind of coming to humanity's side would be a huge change in the status quo.
Right. I mean, yes and no on that front. I mean, the whole awakening of the Traveler, whilst it doesn't feel like it's done anything, it is supposed to be the thing that's moving all these elements along. So in that sense, I kind of disagree, but even so, I completely get what you're talking about from a narrative perspective.
I agree with your disagree, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. If I may say as well, I'm going to just throw this out to everybody. Do you think we'll finally understand, and this is maybe a bit of a personal kind of dogged question that always bugs me with Rasputin, do you think we're finally going to get pure clarity on what Midnight Exigent actually is? Because ever since Sleeper Simulant, and we saw the Grimoire card surrounding the weapon, of course, the flavor text that's attached to the top is something along the lines of, you know, subroutine Icolos status complete, subroutine Midnight Exigent still in progress. So, Rasputin has been doing something, and that something is what I really want to find out more about. It's what's been bugging me all this time. So, what do you guys reckon? Do you think we'll actually get any more clarity on that? Because I think that's, like, it's not going to be stated because it's so complex in the lore, but I think that resolution is kind of key to Warmind.
I really hope fighting the Hive on Mars is not, and preparing to fight the Hive on Mars is not Midnight Exigent. I really hope it's not.
Yeah, I agree.
That's all I'm going to say.
I think they're going to use Rasputin as an opportunity for Anna Bray to discover how bad her history is and dive a little bit into what happened during the collapse, but not necessarily reveal anything in any real detail. And I think that might be the link to the Hive.
I agree.
I think that's how they're going to link those two aspects together. They're going to give a little bit more information about the collapse and Hive arriving and being on Mars, and any sort of protocols will probably remain in Rasputin lore. So, you know, I mean, obviously we had the Grimoire cards in D1 where they brought up all those protocols. So unless they have a system for bringing in that kind of depth, I don't think we'll get an explanation for any sort of Midnight Exigent or other things that were happening.
See where it was going, but you saw the lore tabs, and I didn't see where it was going, but I saw it on one of the Reddits where the armor, was it the armor? Has like code, and then they have to like reverse engineer the code through sound wave, analyze, analysis.
That was a huge...
Did they ever figure out what all that?
They did.
I saw the depth of that thread, and I was like, I don't even want to look at this. I don't have time right now.
Same.
Okay. Right. Yeah, I'm like, that's same here.
So,
dude.
When I was at the summit ride and I was doing the inspection on all the gear, so all of the there seems to be, well, there's two gear sets that we saw. One was the pretty much Clovis Bray gear set, which told information about Clovis Bray, and the other gear set was the Rasputin gear set. And the Rasputin gear set didn't have lore tabs, and the Clovis Bray one did. But the flavor text for the Rasputin gear set was just basically numbers and letters, and I was like, This is the puzzle. I don't know how to solve this, but this is a puzzle. And it turned out that it was, and I think that is another transmission from Rasputin when they solved that. So it's in the same style as all the previous Rasputin Grimoire cards.
Yep.
So, yeah, but I once again I'm in the same boat as Byf. All the Rasputin stuff was like, I need full days of me just reading and researching and formulating what this is talking about, and to use sort of previous knowledge on how Rasputin communicates to sort of understand what it's saying.
Not to mention
actually too,
rereading everything that we've had for Rasputin, and then also needing to also look back into like some vocab and try to like retranslate it from what we might have thought that it was. So there's a number of different things to do again.
Yep, that's gonna be fun.
Oh, it's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, it's gonna be. I can imagine shutting myself. 2 weeks from now, I will just shut myself in my office, and I will just sit back and do nothing but read code for a few days, and I'll come out looking like the guy from Sunny in Philadelphia with the kind of with just the board with all the red strings attached to it, and there's gonna be Rasputin in the center of that board, and then all sorts of it's gonna be nasty. Conspiracy.
Just imagining with my hair getting longer, I'm gonna like pop out of my office here and be like Doc Brown.
He's gonna look like a real
and just
Bearded Grizzly.
Oh, real bearded.
Marty, what do you mean 1.21 gigawatts? Anyway, sorry.
Oh gosh. Okay, so gotta say it as well. It's time for the bit where I think we are all kind of dreading what Joker will say. Also, I guess what all of us will say. Hopes and fears. On that note, I'm going to go ahead and throw it straight to Joker. What are your biggest hopes and your biggest fears for this expansion? We'll start
So my
with
biggest
fears,
hopes,
and we'll go to
honestly.
hope. Okay, no. We'll do it your way.
Start
My
with
apologies.
hopes. No, I want to start with hopes because that's a nice place to start with. It gets us in a great state of mind. So when I start to tear it down, all of you feel the dread.
That's the opposite of what management classes would teach you.
I was sitting there thinking the exact opposite, being like, we can tear it down at the start and maybe we can level it out at the end.
Build it back up.
Nah, I'm leaving it to you, man. You go for it, Joker. Go for it, my dude.
No, I'll start with fears. I mean, I've kind of outlined it a bit. It's remember Dark Below.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Dark Below really didn't, even with, Crota and all the stuff that we know now, Dark Below didn't really attain any relevancy until The Taken King.
Mm-hmm.
Before then, Crota was just an overgrown Hive Knight.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing more, nothing less. Even with, his own grimoires, still, I also think that, as we've covered before, there's just too many moving pieces to tell a concise story. Yes, they're bringing back the scannables. Thank you. Yes, there could be something interesting with the collectibles, but then again, that could just be the sleeper simulant.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or whatever the exotic of this DLC is, I should say. I think that Taken King was a much larger expansion, dealing with way more simpler topics, honestly, and it had the entirety of the grimoire to help it out. This doesn't have that. So their storytelling has got to be on point. I mean, we can sit here and we can talk about, are they going to do Anna Bray justice? Are they going to explain that? The only reason I brought that up is because I think it's an unnecessary complexity, right? Like if it was Elsie Bray, you're just like, Elsie Bray, she's investigating what her sister was investigating when her sister died. Done. That's your plot. That's all I needed.
Right.
But now it's like, Anna Bray, she hid her death or she faked her death because you're not supposed to look into your past as yada, 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 yada. And I'm like, that doesn't... Now I have to think about that.
It's another case of like, plot MacGuffin, right? We don't need this.
So when they're doing their writing, there's a lot of things that, at least on the outset, because we are talking about things on the outset, we don't know how it will pan out. It could be that gas shock, it actually is Elsie Bray. That
would be a twist.
I think... Yeah, they doing all this marketing to say, hey, it's Anna Bray, and everybody's getting like kind of riled under the feathers, and it's like, no, hey, gas shock. We actually know what we're talking about. Cool down.
Dude, it would be a Knights of the Old Republic level twist, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Psych.
So I think there is some fears in the story. If I go to like gameplay mechanics, because I know we're talking about the lore and stuff, if we go to gameplay mechanics, I'm afraid that they put way too much effort into a single mechanic again, and it's going to be useless in a month. And that's with the new Horde mode. Oh, yeah. And I mean, we've seen this with Court of Oryx, we've seen this with Archon's Forge. Once you get everything, there's no reason to really replay it. I mean, you'll probably replay it when it's the when it's the monthly thing or the weekly thing, but you're not going to replay it just to replay it. I don't think so. Unless it's like the funnest thing ever that we've ever experienced. But Horde modes, it just for me in general, unless it's really customizable, get really repetitive really quickly. So I'm afraid for that. I'm afraid that they're not going to, like they did with Curse of Osiris, they're not going to tie the raid into the campaign or the raid layer into the campaign. Now, there is this overarching story with Callus, but it's like not there. It's not really in the game. Like if you look at some of the lore tabs and if you look at some of the out-of-game media, you kind of have an idea of what's going on, but the overall story for Callus is like, oh, and there's a raid layer this week. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So those are my fears. My hopes are I'm going to be wrong. I always want to be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I think, if if they kind of accept that they're not going to be able to juggle everything, and they just try to juggle the important parts, like the Hive Gods, Rasputin, and they knock those out of the park, I can forgive, Anna Bray not being explained. Like, who cares?
Yeah.
I can forgive, like Beard at the top of this is like, man, I hope they explain why Rasputin's on Mars. And I'm like, well, in the Grimoire, that was the first place Rasputin went. And he started messing with Valis Tark, doing space lasers. And I'm like, so, like all of that, like I can accept a hand wave if the hand wave is a good hand wave,
Mm-hmm. Cool.
So I hope that's where they go with it, and I hope they tell a really tight-knit, concise story that makes use of all the pieces, even if it's not the best use. Because with Destiny 1, and we always go back to this, Destiny 1 did not have the greatest story ever, but it was charming.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where I'm at. I have hope. I'm cautiously optimistic. I know we say that a lot, but I do have hope.
Nice.
And that's it for me.
I'm gonna go ahead and throw it to Beard next, if that's all right. And yeah, what are your hopes? What are your fears, my dude?
Well, yeah, I'll start with the fears, and then we'll go to the hopes, because that's how you do it. So the things that I'm certainly fearful of kind of mimic what Joker's kind of talking about, but they're these overarching stories, I think, overall. My fear, however, a large fear, is that we're not going to see stuff like Weblaw continue in its overall depth. And that is the thing that I don't want to make it seem like it was just a marketing campaign to bring people back in. I want to make sure that that is something that's constantly continued to make people think and come back to it, to investigate past stuff, and to tie it back to the Grimoire that is obviously from references, especially that first opening monologue in the comic, oh my god, with Rasputin.
Mm-hmm.
That is
so
probably
good.
one of the best things that I have read from this lore in a long time.
Because, dude,
if you're not...
it references so much too, right? Like, I went back and read
Yep.
Red Space Before Victory, and it knits together, and it's so good. In Red Space, it's like, from a Red Space Before Victory, and then the other one, it's... I can't remember the exact quote, but it's, a silent space before sunrise.
Oh, and then you get then you got the Ghost Fragment, Rasputin 4 that's like mentioned,
You've
and
got
Ghost Fragment Mysteries.
Yeah, that's-
Ghost
yeah,
Fragment, Rasputin 4, Rasputin 6. There are quite a few that are actually referenced
So
already
good.
within that opening part. And that is easily one of the best things to kind of call out and say, we still understand this stuff and we still want to reference it. So to me, that is acknowledging enough to just simply say, yeah, we got this, don't worry, we want to see it continue. But my fear is that that's just going to be used like once in a while when it needs to be looked at all the time. And I've already covered, honestly, a good majority of my fears when it comes to like the actual story prediction side of things. My hopes are just that it's going to set that piece of wonder that I think we've been missing in the community all over again, that it makes me feel like I have something that I'm fighting against within the Soul system, and it doesn't make me feel like I'm just a guardian going to these like off at proven myself in everything, and these things are going to be like off kilter or something like that. I'm a fairly important guardian supposedly, and I'm going to off-site planets that don't seem to hold much anymore outside of the campaign. So that's what I really want to see is more tie-ins back to like what we've had previously. It just would make a lot more sense to me. And Mars, going back to Mars, was one of the that was one of the planets that made a big difference for us, right? Like we've got the Black Garden there. You've got the Clovis Bray facilities that are there. We're not necessarily even sure if the Vex actually took the Black Garden back over in the interim of Gaul taking over. These are the things that we're still kind of up in the air about. If the restorative mind actually did its job this time. These kind of questions are, at least to me, still kind of open, and I would love to see it if they could actually like close them out. But in the same, if nothing else, and I know I'm probably going to get some flack for this one, but that's fine. We're really grabbing up the retcon word very quickly, I think, in many circles. And I see this a lot through the conversation that happens with on my Discord, through my Twitter, and it's immediately just like, well, it looks like they retcon this, and I go back and I look for a little while, and I'm like, no, read it this way, or check out this piece of gear. And one major one is the Charlemagne incident. You know, as much as I know that we were kind of set on the idea of there being multiple Warminds, the only ones that really were, you know, on that idea were either ones that were following along with Tyra's message, or were ones that were effectively of the Vanguard. We never saw any backlogs, at least to the Golden Age that we have right now, to absolutely put in place that was a necessary thing, at least for now. You know, I gotta dig further in this. I'm not saying that I'm an expert on it, because I've already said I gotta reread all the stuff on Rasputin pretty heavily. But the biggest thing to just simply say, hey, it's a retcon, I would hope that from a community aspect we can calm down on it just a bit. I'm not saying to put off the ideas that Bungie is rewriting their story or anything, but we've got such a multitude of lore to look over, and with them absolutely confirming that the Grimoire is still being looked back on, that means we've got Destiny 1 and Grimoire to always tie back to, along with flavor text. So always keep that in mind. My hopes for the community is that, like we saw with that Twitter conversation happen with Chris Barrett, is that we all just come back together. That is my biggest hope, because I feel so splintered right now, and it would be so great to be back together.
If I could add something to that point about what the community expected, and it is something that I can say, but that we spoke about at the summit, was they are highly aware of theories or predictions that the community hold as almost truth, and you know, they ask, like, how do we manage stuff that the community now has been saying for so long that it's actually been sort of snowballed into being canon, even though we haven't actually officially said something. And Charlemagne fits right into that category of nothing's really been confirmed about Charlemagne, but it has been snowballed into like Charlemagne's Warmind. And that's what the community accepted as truth. And so it's hard as a writer from Bungie to like change that narrative now and without getting backlash. So I 100% agree with what Beard is saying, and I think what I can say is that they are very aware of certain topics that the community has now sort of made canon and how to handle that.
Canonized.
Yeah. So I'll be interested to see, and I actually think that's why Charlemagne's in there, and I actually think that's why they gave. That's why they specifically said Charlemagne was a submind. I actually think that was in direct response to the community, pretty much, canonizing.
Yeah, I actually did a video about this the other day where it's like, Charlemagne hasn't been mentioned in lore. He was mentioned in an interview well before Destiny came out, Charlemagne's Vault.
What was like
and that was
alpha info for the most part,
so,
but yeah, there's some mix. I get it.
He's in the quest.
There's like some letters.
Yes and no.
There's some letters that allude to Charlemagne,
as opposed to Rasputin.
But it's not like Charlemagne is like directly named.
I've also got to go ahead and say it. I completely get the idea of people jumping to a conclusion like this, but the reality of it is that whilst it does snowball into what would look like canon, it doesn't do so for an illogical reason. So if you go back all the way to, say, what Eris says in the Siege of the Warmind mission, she states that Rasputin is the last of the Warminds, right? If you go back and take a look at, say, what your Ghost says in the vanilla campaign of Destiny 1, he says this used to link to the Warmind of Mars. So I think it's also a thing of being cautious about what has happened, and yes, obviously, as you said, Matt, they understand what theories are out there. But it's a future lesson, I suppose, then, about managing the expectations of what your community says as opposed to being so definitive. It's also something that kind of haunts them from Destiny 1, if I'm being honest, because if you look 100%. Back to it, that's when the story kind of sucked. like in every single way. But the thing that haunts them now about that is that wherever
plucky.
there was kind of something which maybe was meant to be a bit ambiguous and a bit mysterious, the community has been forced to say, this is what we know, this is a thing, and accept it as fact. And so, I mean, this allows us to approach it in a way that is logical to us, but as with many things in Destiny, the foundations don't end up being so. I will simply also say this, whilst it is going to be a really tricky thing for everyone to accept, I think we still need to go ahead and sit back and just wait, because even on this front of Charlemagne, even though I will openly admit it pisses me off to my core that it's not a Warmind, even though I got irritated at that in the video I just made, even though I said this is an inconsistency, and we've had these examples of there being multiple Warminds as have been stated by these characters, and Charlemagne was in the Icolos core, even with that, in the end I still sat down and I was like, this can still be rectified. It's not pleasant, it feels painful, but it can still be rectified. And it is a very emotional response that we as a community give. And we do hate it. But I think the really important thing for them to pull away from all of this is that sentiment matters. Yes, we take everything that we've seen, we build the canon from what we know, and sometimes what we know is purposefully not right. This is the classic storytelling behind Dreadgan Yor, Jaren Ward, and Shin Malthor and Razel Azir, right?
Right,
Like, the entire thing is based on a lie that Dreadgan Yor was a hunter, when, lo and behold, actually a titan. He cultivated his own myth, and we believed it outside of the universe. Like, that can be great storytelling, but at the same time...
We even see that...
Yeah, I don't know. You've got to make sure that you're managing responses, basically. Managing expectations.
We even see that a little bit in the...
Sorry, Joker.
I was just going to say, we even see that a little bit in the Weblaw, where there seems to be a little bit of an inconsistency with what Zavala's talking about, because Zavala's like, Ikora says that the Traveler's Light is the thing melting the ice, but we clearly see in the comic book it's Rasputin crashing warsats into it.
Yeah.
So there seems to be some selective disinformation going on.
Right.
And I think from a writing point of view, I think the strategy of emphasizing that these characters have different points of view and different theories is a great way to give opportunity for content creators to make theories, but also not like pigeonhole them to concluding something or until they're ready to. So I actually like that in the Weblaw that that Cameron disagreed with Master Reinhardt's theory, and it was like it was nice to see that them saying this is not truth yet, and I think that's a good way to balance some mystery and also provide opportunity to like theorize.
It's not to, my comment was definitely not meant to. If it sounded like it to belittle anybody's ideas,
no, dude, no,
coming up with concepts or anything. Like, for God's sake, if you go to my channel, it's nothing but spin foil. Like, let's be real.
It's why I'm glad you brought it up, because again, that's exactly the whole point, right? Like, if there was an objective voice on that topic, it was going to be you, my dude.
Well, and that's the largest thing. Like, for me, when if you're not familiar with me too, I have now 3 full books of Destiny-related information that I have scoured between the grimoire, the flavor text for weapons, this, that, the other thing, finding the small names, writing up what it is that I know about them so that I can quickly reference them. And what I found from that Weblaw stuff that we have received, I have not written that many pages on stuff in a long time. So that is where, for me, like when Matt, you mentioned about like the openness of this information, of how it doesn't pigeonhole us into certain things. I have the exact theory in mind that counters what both Joker and Pipe are talking about. And I'm just sitting here going, this is amazing, because we're 4 different creators that realistically come up with different... Bife and I have the same video come out sometimes the exact same week. We might cover the same basis, but all of a sudden we're covering it in a different manner. You know, this is the thing that makes us unique in that regard, and what I think we've missed from Destiny 1's lore, what we've missed from the basis of what that gave us, and just this web lore alone has like re-energized that idea. And I love having us sit here and argue about that stuff. Like we haven't had that in so long, and it's just so good to have that feeling again.
Agree.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's funny because you're talking about that, and I remember one of the things that got me into content creating is I was watching Byf do a live stream with Leah,
and you disagreed,
and they were talking about the Vault of Glass, and I was like, he's wrong when it comes to time travel.
Yeah.
And
may I also say,
and I was like, nah, dude, I'm gonna do this.
This is part of why I stopped streaming, because I fumble under pressure, and I'm like, it's this, and then I'm like, oh wait, no, it's not. Or, oh yeah, no, I got this. No, I can pull it back and mash it together. That does not always happen.
Script
your
like
videos,
it gave me that spark.
Script your videos, kids.
Script your videos.
Yeah, exactly.
I do. I just go off script.
Organization is not a bad thing. Let me tell you what.
Oh, yet another reason why I don't.
But
stream
it's still to like I said, to talk to Grizzly's point. It's this spark within the community, because there's obviously this passion to talk about the lore and to want more lore. And I mean, if you're Bungie and your worst problem is people want more of your lore, more of your game, oh well, I'm sorry. What a terrible problem to have.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Byf,
if I may,
do you want to share your hopes and fears?
I think I shall do that and let you finish it out after we're said and done here.
Sure.
I think my biggest hope with this is that they keep listening, because realistically, this has got to be one of the, as we always say, those steps forward, and it's not going to be the September update, which everyone is heralding as the new comet. But I do think that the most important thing for them to do is to keep listening. And from what you say, Matt, about the summit, and from what everyone else says, they are doing that. But this has got to be a constant process. I don't want a Bungie that sits on its laurels, you know? From what I have seen, and Joker, you actually made a fantastic video exposing some of this stuff from Glassdoor and just saying, hey, this is a thing. If everything that's been said by the ex-employees of Bungie is true, and I hate bringing this stuff up because, you know, it's a little bit of a fresh wound.
It is speculative. We should say that
very much
take it with a grain of salt.
But if it's true that the company has a culture of being very high and mighty, and being a bit holier than thou, and resting on the laurels from Halo, they need to get that notion out of their head right away. They need to ignore that, abandon that, because they need to acknowledge that whilst Destiny 2 financially was a success, it is a PR nightmare. And not listening to communities has been one of their biggest problems, and I do not want them to get complacent. Because these are issues generally across the game which need to be addressed for the long term. This now needs to be a constant thing. They talk about this summit being an exceptional moment for Bungie because it's the first time they invited their community in en masse to talk about improving the game. Do not let it be the only time. Let it happen over and over again. Have the consistent communications with us on Twitter. Unshackle the devs like Chris Barrett has been unshackled, and let them talk and let them interact. Give more regular means of communication. The developer insights are good. The TWAB is good. Everything that you're putting out with regards to potentially bringing back the Bungie podcast, a good idea. Any time when you've sat there and just let a dev go to Reddit and be like, by the way, we're doing this. These are all good things. Do more of them. Do these and do other things. But most importantly, when it comes to us as a lore community, keep listening over a long period of time. Because if there's going to be a group of people that sticks around with the game for the long haul when the gameplay is sour and stale and maybe isn't perfectly there, it'll be us. We are going to be sitting there doing our theory. We're going to be the ones sitting there going back through old story missions because we wanted to see if it was this line of dialogue or this, right? Like, listen to us. That is what I really want them to do. That's my hope that they do this. My fear is that this will just be another step towards something that is a little bit less... Well, I don't think they can go backwards again after Curse of Osiris, but I just hope that this is a step forward. And this is what kills me too. I'm in that state where normally I would sit here and say I'm cautiously optimistic, like most of you guys would, but now I'm just numb, and I don't want to think about it anymore. I don't experience hype for these in the same way I did. I don't feel as excited about a Destiny release as I did, and I know that'll change when I actually sit down and play the campaign. Because the minute that I see a worm god, I'm going to be like, oh my god, this is amazing. But, you know, I sit here and now I have been forced into this mode of sterile objectivity. And my fear is that I am going to sit there and in my sterile objective way, I'm going to be like, this is not a step forward. This is a sidestep. This is something different, but more of the same quality. And I don't want
You're
that.
afraid you'll miss the forest for the trees.
Right? I really want to make it very clear as well. Nobody on this podcast absolutely, including Joker, I should say, no one on this podcast wishes this game ill. No one wants this game to fail. Nobody is
not
doing
at all.
anything along those lines. We want a Destiny that exceeds all our expectations. We want a Destiny that blows us away. And, you know, this is the state that the fandom is in. If I'm going to be completely honest, there is a lot of hope as well, but, I mean, not all the players are going to come back. And if my hopes are truly there, they will listen, and then there's a chance they will come back. So keep listening. That's my hope.
Yeah, it's going to take one hell of a word of mouth from the people who do stay, who do choose to, you know, stick it out, to even get a fraction of what was lost back. Because there's just, you burn a bridge,
Right?
and you burn it hard.
Yep.
I mean, it's maybe not a great example, considering that Lumi came back, but when Luminosity left, I deliberately pulled his tweet and screenshotted it because I knew I'd use it in a video, and his screenshot says, "Destiny is just not for me anymore. Players need to feel like it's home. They need to belong somewhere, and if you don't feel like you belong, ultimately, it's not like it's Bungie's failure, but they've done something and they've missed something. It's an imperfect design, and at the end of the day, that is a problem. That's part of the reason why people leave Destiny 2. I think it's probably the biggest underlying thread. They removed things or changed things that made people feel like they belonged. Remove the Grimoire, the lore people don't feel like they belong. Remove the weapon system, the PvPers suddenly don't feel like they can play well, which means they don't feel like they belong. You remove some of the stuff which made PvEers happy, like having a power fantasy of a weapon or having supers that feel effective. All of a sudden, they don't feel like they belong. Make players come back. Because they should belong. So Matt, on to you, my buddy.
Cool. So fears would be that, you know, when I think of Rasputin and I think of Worm Gods and Nokris, that, you know, like you guys have said, there's a lot to cover there, and sort of going from that fear into a hope, I hope that they pick some specific, you know, subplots within Rasputin and the Worm Gods, and they flesh them out, and then there can be surrounding mysteries about that. So, you know, Rasputin and Clovis Bray, you've got Anna Bray discovering her past, you know, what Clovis Bray was up to, the corruption, the experiments, the creation of Warminds, the creation of Exos. Like, there's so much there. So I hope they just they pick something and they give it a really satisfying, you know, plot line. And then with the Worm Gods and Nokris, right? I hope they pick an aspect, like, let's say we want to explore why Nokris was, you know, abandoned by Oryx. Let's give that some flesh, and we'll leave the other stuff unanswered. My fear is that they'll be maybe too ambitious and try to cover like too much stuff, and and in doing so, nothing will get justice. So that's one of my first fears. Is there are some really meaty topics there, and I hope they just pick a small part and they just do it really well. I think that Bungie's done a very sort of, they're really good at marketing when it comes to this kind of stuff. I mean, I'm, after all the developer insights and Worm Gods and Nokris, like, I am well and truly aboard the hype train, but part of me is like, I really wish that Worm Boss, that Worm God and Nokris was kept secret, because I feel like it would have had more of an impact. I feel like they do themselves disjustice by revealing that stuff in marketing. And I know you need to do it because it gets people in, but can you imagine seeing that worm
I'm worried
god
it's
and
the
that
Osiris
build, and that build up? Can you imagine seeing that for the first time in game? I just feel like that has more impact, and I feel like that's the Dark Souls environmental storytelling impact that you ruin if you see. It's giving the bosses of God of War screen time before you see them yourself. Like it does take you out of that element. So I hope there's more secrets, environmental storytelling that hasn't been spoiled.
If I may, Myelin, as well, before you say anything, my god, just to reiterate on what you were saying, can you imagine how hyped up we would be if they'd released everything but the fact that Zol was a thing in this expansion,
exactly.
right? They'd still given us Apocrypha,
right,
so it still would have been like Will of Thousands, and then in the press packs they release a strike saying this is called Will of Thousands. Imagine all of us four then sitting there connecting those two dots and being like, oh my god, not
is
Chris
it a worm god?
He's not the only one here.
Yeah.
There's a worm god in this. And then being like, will we see a worm god? And then we actually see it in the expansion. And as you say, we get really excited because it's a worm god.
Because who here would have predicted? We don't know yet. This all could be very clever marketing. But let's say we do see the worm god, right? Because it seems to be hinting at that.
Right.
Who would have predicted that we would actually see a worm god? I didn't even predict we would see it in the whole franchise.
It's so far out from
in the history.
Like,
Yeah, I thought we were definitely quite far out. I'm worried. Not to steal the
go for it.
the mic, but I'm worried it's the Osiris thing where they use it to in the advertising. They use it to hype the DLC, and then like Osiris isn't.
Just let down.
Here's your final cutscene and enjoy his voice comms, right?
Yeah, but let's be honest here. At least Anna Bray has, a little bit more uptime in terms of being in her own comic versus what it was with Osiris. Let's look at that.
No, I will completely agree. And at least she's not Brother Vance.
Right, good. There is no way that anyone will interpret this as anything other than prophecies.
Suddenly, the Rasputin turns into something like Brother Vance, and we all just go away and fizzle off.
I'm done.
Anyway, I'm sorry.
If they give Rasputin a silly Russian accent and then he starts speaking English and it's all just drunk
I think you
AI.
found the quitting point for the Joker. It's when the Rasputin starts talking like Borat, no?
He's not bad. He's not good.
Just. I'm just saying, it can always get worse, guys. I'm not saying that means much, but
Okay, but is that worse or is that sideways in lunacy?
Oh my god.
Well, it depends on what universe you're from, okay? We already talked about this with stepping through time.
Which of the 6 circles of seduction are we walking into? Which of the 9 circles of hell are we falling through?
Right. You see? You see how this works?
Mm-hmm. Oh gosh.
One man's trash, another man's treasure.
Oh my god.
Wow.
But yeah,
I'll add a couple other points on the end of that. But I'm glad you guys agree. Glad you agree.
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, but I think it's good because it seems like we're all on the same page. Where it would be nice to we haven't really got those big secrets and those big reveals and those big wow moments in Destiny 2 at all. I mean, maybe the Traveler, okay, like the Traveler coming back and that kind of thing. But, we didn't really get it in Curse of Osiris, so it will be nice to see like a big wow moment that hasn't already been advertised. The raid lair continuity is something that I'm, still concerned about and fearful for. I really hope there's a lead in, an introduction, just connecting the campaign and the world of, single player to a raid in some way, so it doesn't feel so disconnected. And the last fear is about depth. I doubt there's going to be a new system to deliver in-game lore yet. And obviously Scannables are returning and they have their own issues. So if Weblaw doesn't continue, we're still going to have an issue with depth of D2 lore, and there's a really big valley between now and September. So, I'm fearful that we've got great stuff now, but there might be a bit of a valley until September.
And the good news is they'll announce at E3 what's going on, and that'll kind of pad it a little, and supposedly there's a new event, but even then I feel the same pressure, man. Like, I totally understand where you're coming from. Season 3 is going to be a trying time. Hopefully not as trying as Season 2, but I'm with you on that 100%.
I think Season 3 actually looks more promising than Season 2. And this is coming from me.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm just saying, when I'm like, hey, maybe it's not as bad. Maybe it might be, but maybe not,
Well, let's put it this way. When you give me something like the Prophecies of Osiris and I all of a sudden don't feel like I want to cover them.
yes, exactly.
Darn it.
I'm excited to make a lore video that has more D2 references than D1 references. Put it that way.
Right.
Like, 90% of my lore
Was
videos
I the only one who
is like one quote from D2 and the rest is Destiny 1 Grimoire cards or lore.
Yeah.
I
Absolutely.
yeah, because you're looking at, say, something in D2 and you're like, okay, but now I got to go back to D1 to justify it.
exactly.
Right.
So that
And then you're like, but wait, oh my god,
I
is
think
this legit?
I have very high hopes for the sort of integration of everything so far. I do feel like it's cohesive at this stage. Just seeing the lore tabs and seeing the Weblaw, and their interaction with Bungie devs and the way they're speaking, it seems cohesive. And I think if anything was good about Destiny 2, I guess it was getting more cohesive. People went from what is this story about to I know what's happening, and maybe it was oversimplified. So I think I'm hopeful this will hit a nice balance between a cohesive story, and giving clarity to some areas, and then also introducing a whole bunch of mystery. I'm hopeful I really want to learn more about Clovis Bray and like all the dodgy stuff that we're doing. I really,
oh god, yeah.
Like, I want that expanded. I'm really hopeful for this boss. If this boss battle that they're speaking about is delivered well, I think that's going to do a ton of good for lore, because the general community will be interested. That's what happened with Oryx. Oryx was such a great villain. People wanted to know about him. And if they can introduce a boss that people are like, this is such a great boss battle, I just killed that, I feel so powerful. If they can give people that feeling, they want to know the baddie. They want to know the villain they killed. And they will go to Byf, they'll go to Beard, they'll go to Joke and go, hey, tell me about this guy that we just slayed. Like, what's his deal? And I'm really excited for that. And so I hope that boss battle is absolutely epic, because I think that will boost a lot of interest in the story of Destiny. And I'm
calling it now. Middle of the boss battle, or Sap just falls.
Oh my god.
Just
Oh, why?
oh my god, just like this massive
that
worm
possibility
just
is so shocking to me that I don't even want to think about it. Like least climactic death you could possibly do, unless it's like we need to weaken him first and do that, and then it's like, okay, Rasputin, drop the hammer. But
yeah,
I mean, and then the last thing I want to say, and I think this is a good way to start sort of wrapping up. I think Bungie's been criticized for just saying we're listening, and my thoughts is that they are acting. I'm sure you heard about things at the summit that basically they pitched an idea to us and everyone was like, boo, everyone will hate this, and they literally scrunched that idea up and threw it in the bin, and they moved
Dato's
on.
metaphorical took. Yeah,
they moved on very quickly. Like, okay, then what do you want? And I think any of that previous culture was, it was I don't know enough about that, but there was definitely, I feel like there was a breaking point. Like, I don't care what you guys think. I mean, more developers, we need to not just be saying we're listening. We need to like actually be listening and then delivering. And I think September really will reveal if that listening is translated into game changes, and if it's not, I think Destiny franchise, I've never made a Destiny is dead, but if September doesn't deliver everything that they've said they've been listening to, I think it could be a very big like, I'm okay. I properly am leaving Destiny now, and not like I think people will say that I'm definitely leaving, and I'm not coming back this time. You're not getting me to come back, and I think that's a very real possibility if we don't see massive changes in September.
And I was about to say, man, you sounded hopeful, and it gives me a lot of joy whenever I hear someone say that Bungie listens and they're actually going to do stuff about it, and then you're like, but if they don't, it's going to die. And I'm like, okay.
Dun, dun, dun.
Okay.
Well, and we're all definitely feeling the pressure from this, either creators or I'm sure from Bungie and from like high-level guys to low-level guys. You can say it as a business, you can say it as anything, but for many of the people that are still probably over at Bungie, it's still a passion. I can't imagine it's not.
Yeah.
So I'm sure that they don't want to see it die either.
No.
Yeah.
You know, Matt, you
And to
would be
Bungie's credit.
Yeah.
Oh,
Absolutely.
I was going to say, and to Bungie's credit, how many of you played Halo?
Right? I assume that's all of us.
They had no community communication during the Halo years.
What? And the truth comes out.
Next thing you're telling me you're a hunter. What the?
Whoa.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
gosh.
But they've definitely gotten better with the communication, and it is kind of hopeful to see the leaps and bounds with the bringing the community in. Hopefully that wasn't for show. You know, it doesn't sound like it was, but there is a jaded segment of the community that goes, you know, that was just for show.
And you know what? This is what I say too. Like, I am in a very different mindset of bias because it is actually, as much as you try to be neutral, when you go to Bungie Studios and when you talk face to face with a developer, it is very hard to get back to those levels of criticism because, you know, just meeting someone and putting a face to a name and knowing that they're human and they go to work and they work Monday to Friday and this is their job and they're just trying to do their best, like it influences my bias a lot, and is probably, or is definitely why that I'm probably more positive about, you know, the Warmind, and it's from that experience as well. And I think people need to take that.
And there's
with a grain of
definitely,
salt. Like, you know, when they hear me speak, I think people need to consider that, you know, that is one of my biases at this stage, is that it's still fresh in my sort of experiences and memories.
And I was gonna say, there's definitely another level of civility that you have to use with that as well. Like, it's easy to get on YouTube and kind of like try to make a funny video where you're doing a little bit of trash talk. I don't know any creators who would do that, but when you're sitting in the room,
this guy,
when you're sitting in the room, you know, there's a whole bunch of different tools you have to use. You know, you have to tell them, hey, yeah, you know, I appreciate the work you've done, you know, and kind of what, but let's be honest, it's not taking with people, and maybe you do actually need to course correct. Let's, you know, see how we can do that.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think, you know, if they're willing to do that, if they're, you know, but if we get another Destiny 2 or we get, you know, another Curse of Osiris, I think even after the fall DLC, I think people are willing to forgive. I don't know how many are willing to forget.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay, one final question before we round out. This is a 3 possible answers question. I'm going to go ahead and send this round to each of you. Zol, worm, dragon, or both? Beard.
Well, Alamkar and Worm Gods are the same thing, so of course it's both.
Fuck, no, I'm out. I'm fucking out. See ya.
So the lore community comes back to it again. This was a mistake. Oh dear. Oh boy.
You're welcome.
The moment when we see its head and it's gonna be actually dragon-like, and it's like, I have wings too, and we're all like, oh my god, wow, okay. Oh, dragon.
I have a more elegant answer.
Okay, so
You guys actually
Joker, what's your opinion?
Okay, so I think they're the worm gods that were found in Fundament, that we call them the worm gods, the dragons. I think they were different species of beings that were trapped within Fundament, and some were dragons and some were these larval worm type things, and it's both. but in different ways, not the way Beard was talking about.
not Beard's troll.
Just to distance myself from that spin foiling jerk over there.
yeah.
My thoughts is like logically, all right. If you're Bungie, why would you want to get rid of the possibility of having actual dragons in your franchise?
Right.
Like, I would leave that open. You know, like let people speculate about it. But like, if they come out and reveal it, like the Ahamkar and the Worm Gods are the same, like you've just lost the possibility of all this fantastic foundational lore with dragons and link them to something that you've already developed. Like, I would leave that open so they could actually introduce dragons at some point. That's what I want to see.
Hell yeah.
So I'm gonna be the total scumbag, and I say both without any sarcasm whatsoever, but partly because I think the Worm Gods are super corrupted. And it's like, it's kind of like the fly, right? Is the Brundlefly really a fly, or is it really a man, or is it really something different, right? Like, that's the Worm Gods, I think.
I was being completely serious with my answer, Byf.
Oh boy.
I mean, look, it's worm spelled W-Y-R-M, okay? We've just been looking at it wrong.
Okay. I'm unfollowing all of you on Twitter and blocking you, okay?
Some look like larvae.
Unfollow,
okay?
unsub, unlike.
Some
you
look
know,
like larvae.
The war of the lore creators began.
Some have the power to change their form like orcs grew wings, okay? You know, so one, you know, Yul looks like a dragon. Zol is a scummy mother, so he looks like a worm, okay?
I'm gonna have to mute that in YouTube. Yay, demonetization.
I am going to bleep that as well. My apologies.
It's all good, dude.
I went a whole, like, 2 hours and, like, I think maybe 5 swear words, okay? I think I did pretty well.
We did pretty
You
good.
did.
You and I controlled our potty mouths very well, dude. Even so, guys, thank you so much if you've been watching this video for this entire time. I don't know if people have been listening to this almost as though it's a podcast, but this is the first time we've done this, and I think if you guys are still down for it, we should try and do this again before the September update releases.
Oh, I never want to talk to you ever
this
again.
was great. Well,
This is it.
Well, damn. Oh.
After this conversation,
After the worms?
Matt, you still owe me $20.
This is true.
To be determined after next week.
But yeah, in case you are wondering, in the links of whatever channel you are finding this on, I'm sure that you can find the links to everyone else down in the description. And yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and hand this over to each individual creator and allow them to do their own outro, but to all of you who have watched across all of our channels, thank you very much for watching.
And there you have it. I hope you guys actually enjoyed sitting and listening to four friends just sit and yak for a while. We tried to keep things structured, but obviously that didn't happen very well, because we're all kind of even-minded here. We all like going on tangents and talking about things from the side, and honestly just having fun. And it was great to finally sit down and actually talk with these three in one room, because talking with them on a consistently, almost daily basis anymore has been interesting and definitely different for me, but overall it's just one of those things that I'm kind of like, we've never actually been in the same room together for at least longer than a couple seconds, I guess. But yeah, I hope you guys do enjoy, or enjoyed this little bit about everything that we were kind of hoping to see from Warmind, and I wonder how it all actually pans out, since here I am in the past, talking to you all spookily and everything. Now it's just because upload and rendering has to take time and stuff. Anyway, I would love to hear what you guys have and any thoughts whatsoever on what you just heard here today as well. I know that we're definitely all individual voices and we all share different feelings and ideas on what it is that's kind of going on with this community or otherwise, but it's still just nice to sit down and chat. But now that we're all done with that, I just wanted to talk about what plans were for the moment. And obviously, everything is tentative based on the topics that we see from Warmind, but I do want to go back through the web lore a little bit further just to kind of touch base on a few extra points that I think might be worth looking into. That being said, I'll see how I want to structure those videos, because I'm not quite sure just yet, but we'll see. Additionally, I kind of want to get back into weapon reviews a little bit, and I think with the exotics the way that they are right now might actually be a fair time, but I'm not sure. I'll really see, because it's a lot of additional work on my end to kind of do them the way that I like to do them. But I don't know. I'll really have to see. Anyway, as far as topics go, I at least have a couple that I want to dip into with Rasputin and about the flash freeze, about the Traveler and Pajari, a few other things that are kind of up there. I've also got a couple of different Guardian schools in the realms and works as well. I've had one that's been sitting recorded now for the past week. It's just been a matter I haven't had time to actually do much with it. Additionally, for those that got this far, I'll assume that asking you might be okay to do too, but would you guys be interested in seeing a lore through of Warmind just posted up to the channel? I'll just have it as a part 1, part 2, etc. I'll sit and voice over it. I'll sit and kind of add my points to it as we go. And I think it would just be a great way to kind of round everything out with final thoughts on the DLC. Especially with my week coming up. I think that's going to probably be one of the only things that I could do for something quickly, just to voice and ad-lib over top of it. Or hopefully get some stuff more structured in terms of thoughts, because as much as I know you guys seem to be okay with me just ad-libbing things, I hate doing it because I feel like I'm not putting enough work into it. Anyway, I feel like I've added on another 8 minutes to this video just by talking myself, so I'm going to leave it be for now. I thank you guys so much for sitting and listening to this. Again, I hope you enjoyed it. You know the buttons to press and everything if you'd like to follow and kind of be here. Otherwise, thank you guys very much again for watching, and I will see you next space time. Take care, Guardians.